Hi and welcome to the session on skills and training within the Worcestershire LEP Virtual Conference. Today here I've got with me Judy Chadwick and Luke Payton. And really skills is one of those issues that always comes to the fore when we survey businesses in Worcestershire about their barriers to growth. And it's really important over this kind of period where we've had the economic shock of COVID that we get the skills and training right. But Judy, so tell us a bit about the skills agenda in Worcestershire and what things have we really prioritised and made a difference with?
So over the last year we've been focused on the Inspiring Worcestershire agenda, so that's supporting entrance into the Worcestershire labour market to understand it, also to understand what employment opportunities there are in Worcestershire and what skills they're going to need to enter that labour market. So we've done that in a number of ways. The first is by working with our educational establishments, so supporting them to meet the careers planning benchmarks that are set by government. So when we started this work in July 2019, at that point we were on average of 2 benchmarks out of 8 met in our educational establishments, and that includes all of our secondary schools, pupil referral units, SEN, special educational needs schools and further education colleges. I'm really proud to say that now we're at 5 out of 8, which is fantastic because what that means is that we can guarantee that we have a high standard of careers planning in our educational establishments, which should support into our labour market in the future. We've also worked on apprenticeships, so we've promoted apprenticeships through our Worcestershire Apprenticeship brand, so we've run a number of events, we've supported employers and we've talked to a lot of young people over the last year about considering apprenticeships as an alternative to higher education. We've also done a lot to encourage people into science, technology, engineering, maths careers. So we know that 14% of our population in Worcestershire work in engineering manufacturing, so we need to encourage people to consider this as a career. So we have 2 pathways around that. We work with primary school students and we've worked with about 60 groups across the county in the last year to undertake a specific competition in 5G technologies to help them understand STEM and to think about whether it might be for them in the future. But also with a number of students who are at level 3, so who are studying either A-levels, who are studying vocational qualifications in further education, and to open their eyes up to the opportunities that Worcestershire has in employment.
Okay, and in terms of that, our sort of measures of success, you went into some of them with the benchmarks. Mm-hmm. Where does that put Worcestershire nationally?
Puts us in a really good place. The national Gatsby benchmark is 3 out of 8. So the fact that we're kind of at 5 is fantastic because it shows what great careers planning we are doing within our organisations. And obviously that, because of the local Worcestershire relevance of that careers planning, that should really pay off for us in the future in terms of making sure that we've got the employment that we need in our economy.
And then what percentage of young people actually had a kind of employer engagement during this period? Well,
last year we had phenomenal success in this area and we had 83% of all of our young people over the age of 11 had a meaningful employer encounter, and that can vary as to what that was. But that's like 20,000 young people. That's phenomenal. So we really should thank our employers for their support with that. But the challenge is it's year on year, so we have to repeat that success every year. So we need more employers to get involved.
Okay, and obviously with the economic climate we're in, apprenticeship numbers, what are they looking like this year?
Well, we'd had some challenges before COVID because of the changes to apprenticeships. We were having some difficulties anyway, which were reflected nationally. You know, during COVID, it's been really tricky for apprentices, and it's really tricky now. We need more employers to look at their workforces and think about their succession planning and offer those opportunities.
So as Worcestershire LEP and the County Council, what are we doing in terms of bringing back that kind of youth and youth employment piece to help and support them?
So we've embraced the summer statement schemes. So the announcement from Rishi Sunak in June, we've looked at that announcement and looked at what we can do in Worcestershire to further enhance that. So we're supporting all of those schemes, and we were able to support all of our employers to access those schemes directly through our Business Central.
And certainly before the COVID piece, the Skills Show was one of our fundamental events that really showed how schools, businesses and young people could kind of work together. The Skills Show, perhaps give us a feel of those organisations and what they should consider before they do the Skills Show.
I think the reason that businesses get involved in the skills show is predominantly because they can see that they're already struggling to recruit. So if you're struggling to recruit now, you're going to struggle in the future if young people know what they know. So if they don't know about your industry, they don't know about you as an employer, then they're probably never going to look to work with you as an organisation. So the employers that have got involved with us, and we had over 100 at the last event, it's predominantly because they recognise the fact that they need to succession plan in their workforces and they need to recruit within their workforces, and they're struggling to do that. So if you spoke to a number of those employers, they'd give you real success stories about how working with schools, how undertaking apprenticeships, how taking graduates has really helped them drive their businesses forward.
Okay, and for the schools, why would they get involved?
Schools really like the event, which is fantastic to hear. It's a really easy way of young people being able to walk around a big event and understand all the different industries of Worcestershire and the employment opportunities that there are within the county.
And then parents and young people have also participated in the skills show.
Yeah, it's a slightly different angle with parents. What we tend to find is that they're coming to ask all the hard and fast questions to find out what route ways there are into employers, whether their young people should be taking an apprenticeship, should they be taking university route way, or actually what the options are for employment in that company.
And have you got plans sort of this school academic year, read the skills show?
Well, that would be telling Gary. Yes, we have. We're probably not going to do a virtual event this year. It doesn't tend to kind of go down so well with young people, and it would be hard to replicate on that scale. But we do have a plan, and we will be announcing that very soon.
Oh, well, I'm looking forward to that and watch this space. Obviously, the other thing we were really proud of was working with the Careers and Enterprise Company and the announcement of the middle school pilots into a kind of proper careers hub. I think is kind of testament to the work that we've done. It means we've got every school for an 11 plus pupil who's engaged in careers. Tell us a bit more about that careers hub.
So we've been working with the middle schools. We've been working 16 of the 21 middle schools across Worcestershire. So Worcestershire has a slightly different schooling picture in that 3 of the districts have primary and secondary schools and 3 have primary, middle and secondary. So what that's meant is if you were in the Careers Hub previously, if you were a young person in years 7 and 8 and you were in Worcester, then the experience that you would have would be slightly different to that in Wychavon. So by bringing those middle schools all into a Careers Hub means that we can guarantee that the experience that young people have for careers planning within all of our schools in the county will be of a really good quality. And we're working with some fantastic middle schools to achieve that.
Brilliant. And Luke, thank you for joining today. So you're a head at a middle school and a lead for the Careers Hub. How important do you think it is to get careers into that middle school cohort to get them thinking about what they're going to do as part of their future?
I think it's never too early to get that careers advice and support for our young people. You know, we are a middle school that our pupils start with us when they're 9 years old, and already they come to us with aspirations about what they want to do in the future. And I think it's really important to try and capture that and provide them with opportunities and guidance to raise the aspiration of young people within our care and to show them sort of what careers they could choose to go into if they decide to work really, really hard.
And your relationship with local employers and schools, you know, how does that play out in terms of the Careers Hub?
Yeah, so we benefit from an enterprise advisor that works with us and owns a local business within Redditch, and he provides us with networking opportunities, working with other businesses in specific areas, but has also provided us with some real hands-on experience that we can share with our young people, with our parents, and that's really opened up a lot of doors for us to sort of develop our careers provision in school.
And a key question, does that then help with Ofsted?
Yes, so the Gatsby benchmarks, as Judy alluded to, are sort of what the standard that we need to work towards. As a middle school, you really can only achieve 7 out of the 8 because the 8th one really is focused on those children in year 11 looking for post-16. And we're really proud of the fact that at St Bede's we can achieve all of the 7 that we should achieve. So yes, it provides us with a lot of evidence, it provides us with that enriching element of our curriculum where we can just develop the whole child and not just look at their academic performance.
Brilliant. And do you think, how do you see the sort of future of the Careers Hub within middle schools? What do you think the key bit going forward would be?
I just think continuing to engage with local businesses is really, really important. Sharing with the children the jobs market within our local area. And I think also the opportunity to share good practice with other schools is really, really important. You know, each school has their own specialism and their own thing that they're keen on sort of tapping into. And I think being able to share those experiences as a group of middle schools will be for the benefit not only of our children, but also our local communities.
And Judy, under the banner of inspiring young people, what do you see as important over in the next sort of 6 to 12 months for Worcestershire to kind of develop?
I think what's really important is that we need our employers to continue working with us. You know, we all appreciate that times are a little bit tricky for some of them, but it is really, really crucial that we're still able to get that number of employer encounters into our schools and that we're still able to influence the future of these young people moving forward.
Thank you both. That's been a really informative session, and certainly if employers are interested in finding out more or volunteering as an enterprise advisor, get in touch with the team at the Worcestershire LEP website, and I'd certainly encourage those people who have really found it valuable to get that relationship between their local school and local employers working really well. So this part of the conference we're going to focus on Worcestershire Apprenticeships and the work that we've been doing to kind of promote those. I welcome here Pippa and Alex. So Pippa, starting with you, what's your current role and then how did you sort of start upon that career path?
Sure, okay, so I am a project manager at Kinetic and I actually started my apprenticeship life in engineering. So when I was at college, I went to sixth form college and I very quickly realised that university wasn't really the place for me. I decided to look into other avenues for my career and I happened upon the armed forces and apprenticeships. And by happenstance, it was actually a talk with my careers advisor. We only got one session once a quarter, something like that. And she mentioned about, what about an apprenticeship? There are plenty of providers within Worcestershire and Herefordshire. And so I spoke to my parents about it, and my dad employs apprentices where he works, and my mum did a horticultural apprenticeship when she was younger. So I had that support from my family, which I think is really important. And I applied to a few apprenticeship providers, namely Herefordshire Group Training Association, and I went for a couple of interviews with some local employers, one actually based in Malvern, and I thought that the prospect of earning while I was learning really kind of sung with me. At the time, I had a Saturday job at a local vet's practice. So my dream job would have been being a vet, but I was doing that job for 4 years, and very quickly I found that actually I wasn't so good with blood. So a vet's job was not going to be the job for me. Hence why I looked into engineering, and engineering specifically because my dad works in the engineering industry, and I'd done my work experience placement at his factory. And so I went through from designing some tools along to actually making them and then finishing them off. And he paid me a little bit for it, for the work experience, which is always good. And so that's really where my dream of going through an apprenticeship began.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, no, and a fantastic story, and just shows that we've got lots of range of things that you can do in the county. But Alex, coming to you. So your role within the local enterprise partnership.
So I'm PR Marketing Communications Coordinator for the Worcestershire LEP, and kind of similarly to what Pippa said, for me it was at sixth form as well, where I kind of had the realisation that, you know, I didn't quite want to go down the same pathway as some of my peers were doing, which was university and stuff like that. It became quite apparent with some of the advice I got from my parents that they thought it was a really good idea for me to pursue that apprenticeship lifestyle, and for me it was really crucial that I got that on-the-job learning, which is something which is really hard to come by for young people these days. So obviously once I then started that, it then began the long search, so to speak, to find it, and I got in touch with several local training providers both in Herefordshire and in Worcestershire, and then I ended up where I am today.
Brilliant. Pippa, in 2016 you were Apprentice of the Year, which was fantastic, but you sort of in your last answer you gave us some feel to some of the challenges that you'd overcome. Perhaps tell us a bit more about those to get where you've got to now.
So when I was an apprentice, I started with the company in Malvern. I had an interview and they offered me a job. And I was 2 out of 4 years into my engineering apprenticeship when the company that I was working for went into administration, which is an absolutely devastating blow, I think, to anybody who is employed, never mind an apprentice, because at least when you're employed, my thought is you have years of experience, you either have that experience or a qualification to go with that. And as an apprentice who hasn't yet finished their qualification, that is really, really devastating. So one day we were just told, pack your bags and go home, the company is closing down. And for a good couple of weeks, I had to do some real soul searching. I found it really, really challenging, kind of picking myself up, dusting myself off, through no fault of my own, but having to go out there and try and either find somewhere else to finish my apprenticeship or think of what I was going to have to do next. And again, it was my parents. I'm really fortunate. My parents really held my hand and supported me through that. And I feel that without their support, it just wouldn't have happened. So at the time, I was going through a foundation mechanical engineering degree. Yeah. And it was just, again, pure happenstance that I was speaking to my college lecturer, and she mentioned that there was a company that was interested in picking up apprentices. They were doing an apprenticeship program. So I applied to them and went in for an interview, and they offered me the job. And that company was Southco Manufacturing up in Worcester. Yeah. And so, yeah, I finished my apprenticeship with them. And I think that turning a negative into a positive was really helpful. I'm quite a driven person anyway, and I like to get the job done. So I felt that I would be doing myself a disservice if I just dropped everything at the point that I was made redundant. And so Southco supported me through the rest of my apprenticeship, and the rest is history, really.
Yeah, brilliant. And we've certainly seen in the current economic climate, a number of apprentices have actually completed their course, and that's really important because that then allowed you to go on to that next step. Yeah,
definitely. And I feel that actually putting yourself out there is really important. I think that by offering yourself to companies to say, look, I know I'm not a rounded, finished item, but I'm willing to put the effort in and I'm willing to learn and I'm willing to challenge myself in changing the way that I'm learning to suit your style from the previous one, can go so far, and it really sets the tone for how you want to progress for the rest of your career.
Brilliant. And coming to you, Alex, you know, sort of, what would you, if you could go back and talk to some young people in year 12 or year 13 about why choose an apprentice, what would you tell them?
Well, well, firstly, I would say do it, take it on, because it really has been the best decision I've made so far in my life. It's really helped me get that foundation of also that really crucial workplace knowledge, because obviously university you can learn kind of the knowledge skills that you need, but you don't get that workplace experience, and that's what I think has really helped me develop as a person, because I was quite a shy and timid person, especially at the start of my apprenticeship. You know, I didn't really like talking to people in the office, so to speak, and I think that's changed quite drastically over the course of my apprenticeship. And you know, now since that I've finished that level 3 and I've now gone on kind of carrying on working for the LEP, I think that apprenticeship is really what enabled me to kind of get to where I am now. So I would really say do it. And of course there is no, you know, money is a good thing, that we all love it, and of course by doing an apprenticeship you get paid as well as learning as well, which is something which I think can make a real big difference to some young people in their decision making process, because obviously not everyone wants a load of debt at the moment. So yeah. Great stuff.
And Pippa, education wise, where are you now? What sort of qualification have you got?
So I finished with a mechanical engineering degree, and obviously we've been talking engineering, and I introduced myself as a project manager, which is kind of left field. So I finished my apprenticeship and I finished my foundation degree. And I decided that actually building on the foundation blocks of an apprenticeship and on a mechanical engineering degree, I saw myself as more of an organiser. And so although I had that foundation, I wanted to progress a little bit more into speaking to clients, speaking to suppliers, the financial side, looking at kind of all aspects of engineering rather than just the designing. And so I went into project management and decided to go along those lines.
Okay, brilliant. And Alex, coming to you, certainly your position in the LEP, you kind of see quite a lot of apprentices and quite a lot of employers But I suppose, what would you say to an employer who's thinking about taking on an apprentice at this time?
Oh, well, yeah, again, similar to, as I said before, I would say do it. I mean, through some of the great projects I've been able to be a part of, such as the Worcestershire Apprenticeship Awards or things like the Worcestershire Skills Show, I get to see firsthand, those apprentices who start off in those companies who now are in quite high leading positions within those companies. So it just shows that by doing that, you're able to nurture that talent pool within your organisation, which then enables you to, instead of going outside for your recruitment, you can just do it internally. And by doing it that way, you save yourselves time, costs, and it helps that team get bigger and bigger, because obviously the people who are there will know each other from being in the same kind of talent pool, and that's really what I'd say is why it makes such a big difference, because it takes away that ability of having to go out and try and search someone who's right for the role, because you've got someone who you can make into that role, so to speak.
Great stuff. Thank you both. And certainly employers looking for more information or advice, worcesterapprenticeships.org.uk or Worcestershire Business Central is where you can find out more information. We're moving on now to look at the skills and training element from a provider's point of view, and I've got with me Stuart Laverick. Stuart's the principal of Heart of Worcestershire College.
Hi, Gary.
And Stuart, the Heart of Worcestershire College provides quite different levels of courses, and it might be worth you just explaining, perhaps people's perception would be it's just all about kind of hairdressing or tourism or those kind of courses, but that's not just what the college does.
No, it's got a wide range of courses, certainly for 16 to 19-year-old students: engineering, construction, IT, business. It goes on. In fact, everything other than land-based we would cover. Also lots of adult courses. We do a lot of work with adults. We have a lot of professional courses. So if you're going to do accountancy, HR, etc., all of those would go through. And we do higher level work as well, foundation degrees. We do HNDs, HNCs. We have a lot of adult work as well, community work. We're also very proud of the work we do with students with special education needs. We're one of the biggest players in that field as well. So very wide range.
No,
students.
definitely. And we've had Pippa and Alex here talking about apprenticeships and really that transition from sort of education into the workplace.
Yeah.
But with COVID, how have things been in terms of providing that kind of learning environment?
It is a challenge in terms of getting that workplace experience, because we've worked really well with Worcestershire employers who've given work placements. We've been out to visits, obviously with apprenticeships as well. That's been curtailed somewhat, but to be fair, we've done some really creative things digitally. As you might guess, Gary, connectivity is good. We did some great sessions where we've been creating projects with businesses and then been supporting it using digital connectivity, working on various different assignments. I saw a great one where my IT people had a hackathon, which worried me by its very name, but obviously working with key employers over at Malvern Science Park, we were able to do some really clever project work. And again, they were able to help design it, but also then support the students learning both synchronously and asynchronously during that process, and again, it's worked well. So again, that adaptability to use technology. We're very lucky. We have very, very good IT kit. I have to say, with you here, the Worcestershire LEP have been very supportive of our initiatives to develop the Centre of Digital Engineering and other initiatives, which means we've got great connectivity. We work well with businesses, so that's how we've adapted. We were already using that, to be honest. We've just had to turn it up a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of that blended learning and kind of keeping the learners engaged, actually, they'd probably be more engaged through the technology than perhaps generally in the classroom.
Well, it's an interesting one, because certainly our experience and coming back from lots of students are saying they like the blend, they've liked the blend. Many students in areas like IT, business have come back and said, actually, this works better with us, the combination. I think the challenge pedagogically is how you use the time at the moment. Now we're working in a blended way, when they're face-to-face, when you're working with groups, making the best of that experience, but what we call in education flipped learning, giving them stuff to do beforehand, using technology, getting them ready, getting them some knowledge, and when they come together then working on that, and then after a session, again using the technology for extension. And you're right, lots of students, one, I think are enjoying it, but most importantly, they understand that it's actually more empowering from them, because they can take more control of their own learning, and certainly for future-proofing, the means to the end matters, and therefore that mode of learning means once they've left us and they're in the world of work and the change that is inevitable, they're empowered to carry on with their learning somewhat without the need to draw on us. Hopefully they'll come back to us for some of it, but they're also empowered to do it themselves, which is critical.
Yeah, and certainly when we caught up with Emma from Southco, she was very much talking about how the employee base was working from home, but actually that sort of training was actually enabled as part of that to help them through. And have you seen that with your own staff at Howe College?
Yes, we have. And I mean, we were lucky because beforehand we were working on a lot of technology work. As you know, we lead a cross-sector grouping called the Blended Learning Consortium, where we deliver online learning materials for all sorts of colleges and other businesses as well. We've done lots of work there. And our staff were certainly used to working remotely. What has been good, we'd moved over to the cloud, so all of our facilities and resources were there and could be accessed. Our people were very comfortable. We're a Microsoft Showcase college, so we were able to very quickly use the technology. Obviously, everybody knows Teams now. We'd fortunately been on that even well before COVID came around, so we were able to use that, and it's been brilliant. And it's been a step change, even for us who were pioneers in our sector in that area. We've really been able to move on. And again, we found that the connectivity's been good. Again, it's useful that the LEP and others have been investing in the connectivity across the county, and on the whole that's proved to be robust, and so it's worked well. I was a bit afraid at first when everybody went online. I thought, will it manage? It was managing, but it did, and it has, and therefore it's worked very well for both staff and students. And I think it's not to say that for some staff it's still more of a challenge, and some staff, and it's not just an age thing either. I have to say that some of me, who are at the older end of the scale, we're very comfortable with technology, but some staff I think do miss, as we all do, a little bit of that personal contact. But again, it's trying to find ways of firing up the relationships online and getting that sort of dynamism going. And I think certainly having done some virtual learning walks, I'm now seeing some really nice interaction of how my staff are working with students and really making some really engaged, interactive learning opportunities.
Yeah. And certainly the college is somewhere where you're proud of your values about how you engage, say, from disadvantaged groups or different. How have you engaged them? Because sometimes IT can be a challenge where you've got a family of 4 that wants to use one computer.
It does, and I mean that is a very real issue, and we've certainly, I think I've spent in excess of a couple of £100,000 now on taking IT out and dongles out to make sure people had connectivity during lockdown. One of the things we successful with now, because the college had always used a blended learning model, we have some very well-equipped learning centres, and those learning centres, we're targeting those for people who have problems with either accessing technology or their family home doesn't allow them to learn. They're being prioritised and supported in college in a distance way, in a safe way, and I think that's been important. But again, we're continuing to invest in mobile technologies, and we're taking that out to people. We still need to do more of that, and it's expensive, and I would say we would be looking for some financial support going forward, but we've had the reserves to be able to support that, and the college, the governors have supported that initiative, so we're happy. Clearly there are some groups like our special education needs students where it can be more difficult, the technology side of it, and they're obviously coming in largely 100%. Some are using some online stuff, but again we can do that safely within our model.
And certainly then within the kind of LEP vision, our partners have supported that in terms of county investing and making sure that we can get as much access as possible. But then when we look to the sort of future, digital seems to be getting more and more important across all the themes. How does the college see that kind of next 3 to 5 years? Because you have to kind of plan that far in advance.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. We're excited by it, and there's no question about it. The last 6 months have moved things on 5 years in terms of people's propensity, willingness and ability to consider technology as a way of learning and a way of working, and therefore that's been exciting. So we'd already built it in, but now we can see the opportunities. We were looking, for example, for our own staff, of where possible, people looking to work probably a day a week from home. But really now where we're seeing for some of the teams, I can see that being a little more, and we should be able to manage that effectively. Certainly in terms of productivity, we've definitely seen with a number of the teams, certainly the back office teams, productivity has gone up. And I think that's really interesting because as a LEP board member, we're often talking about productivity. And technology can aid productivity, but you've got to leverage it. And I think we've learned that we can actually get that blend better to get higher productivity levels. And certainly from a well-being and work-life balance, we've certainly seen staff enjoying that. And certainly in terms of illness and time off work, it's much improved during this period. And we really have seen some big productivity gains. Students, we are expecting that we'll continue with our blended learning model. Do I think that blend will be greater with more online? And yes, I do. I think we were moving in that way anyway, Gary, but it's all about the quality of the content. I think there's no doubt about it. We and other people in our sector have started to develop some really strong learning objects. The more materials you have, the more you can do. And certainly pedagogically, we're now learning how to do a successful blended model. And you said earlier, lots of students like that. But I think what we'll end up doing is be able to maybe give a little more choice. So some students who don't perhaps it works as well with, we'll be able to give them a bit more traditional. And it shouldn't be one size fits all. And really always our vision is being able to adapt to individual needs.
Yeah, and from Emma, she really touched on how difficult it is sometimes to sell the kind of sectors of engineering and construction when young people see fashion and sort of high, fast value moving consumer goods. But the LEP of the county have done loads of work on supporting the college in terms of local growth fund and really made some investments. How do you think those are going to play through in terms of the curriculum and really attracting young people to take those steps into those sectors?
I'm very excited about the fact that our facilities are superb, and it's much appreciated the support we've had in terms of engineering, IT areas like that, top facilities and really good connectivity to those facilities from remotely as well, which I think is important. The challenge will always be, in terms of engineering, clearly it's how people are perceiving engineering as a career. Now, in a sense, we work with schools, as the LEP works with schools, to try and promote engineering as an attractive option. It is a very exciting area, lots of problem solving. Clearly, the future is going to see a lot of technologies being used in order to drive productivity up. And we're seeing, look, there's a really interesting work here. The blend between IT and engineering is fusing together, which is exciting for a lot of young people. So I think it's just a continuous drive to keep that going. It's not easy, because you're right, there are some what appear at first glance sexier subject options, and I have to say easier subject options, Gary, and that maybe comes back to how we look at qualifications, how we look at how schools are monitored and measured so that they can encourage more people to do science and maths and are not just chasing league tables and the pressures that Ofsted bring. And also, I have to say, you do need to invest in a lot of technology and kit when it comes to some of these subjects like engineering and construction. So it isn't an easy option, but maybe as a society we are, certainly the LEP in Worcestershire has been putting more resource that way. If we can do some more work with the schools, and I know we've been really driving on that, and I know people like Judy Chadwick at the county have been doing some good stuff on that, then we'll continue to get them excited. I think we are reaching that stage now as well where this pandemic has maybe brought into question the wisdom of sourcing all your manufactured things from abroad. There's an argument about how the global economy works. And I think as that plays through, people might see and forget the deindustrialisation of the 1980s, which maybe has coloured people's views about how attractive certain engineering and manufacturing jobs are. I'm hoping there'll be a recognition that actually there's a very strong future in the UK in those areas, and then we can continue. As far as construction, it's easy. There's so much going on in and around Worcestershire and the West Midlands, and we're seeing that with our numbers. I just came from our Malvern campus, and I'm awash with joiners and carpenters. Similarly up at Redditch with people looking at bricklaying, so we've got plumbers everywhere. So the numbers are good in construction, and I think people understand the infrastructure commitments, which are exciting, both within the county and nationally. Great, and therefore I think construction's, that's there, and I think that's an exciting area.
And central government made their winter jobs announcement where FE was sort of put front and centre, which is a bit unusual for FE, but yeah. What do you think of that? You know, do you think that that'll fill that retraining gap? Or
I think it was pleasing, but if we were both being honest, we know that's because the anticipation of the big problems with unemployment that will come at the end of the furloughing scheme, and while we're doing readjustment, there will be readjustments coming out of the pandemic. And I think there was need for reskilling and upskilling anyway with the technology changes that were coming through. So I think the need to get back to adult education, because sometimes people often focus at 16 to 19-year-olds, but we know the skills needs are really going to be filled. The biggest part of the workforce are already in work. It's people who'll need retraining and upskilling, and I know that's a big part that FE can play, and I know that's where we're working with the LEP, the Chamber and other people like that to say to employers, really, this is where we can drive productivity and really move forward. It's not just about the young people who are important, but it's about those who are in work and who will continue in work. And many of them, hopefully, and I certainly see it now, I've got staff who are very productive well into their 60s. So retraining people in their 30s and 40s seems eminently sensible. So I think the government drive will help that, because adult education wasn't working. It hadn't been invested in over the last 10 years. This is a really exciting opportunity. It will take time to make sure that we can adjust to that. But I think there's some exciting opportunities. And I know, for example, we've been working on that with a number of other agencies to see what we can do to support people and get as many people back into work, and those already in work to upskill them for the exciting futures that are ahead of us.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stuart. That's been really good and really helpful, and certainly our FE providers, training providers, can be accessed through Worcestershire Business Central to find out more. Thank you. And now we're moving on to employer excellence, really looking at recruitment and redundancy. And with me I've got Ben Mannion, and Ben, you're chair of the Future Skills Board within the LEP. That role and how you see the sort of employers playing their role in the parts that we've talked about, education, we've talked about apprentices. How do you see employers playing their role around the future of jobs?
Yeah, so I think the role that employers have got to play is incredibly valuable. I think in Worcestershire we tend to hear a lot from our client base about there not necessarily being the right talent or skills available to help those businesses grow. So by getting businesses involved with schools, with colleges, to help them develop their career guidance and actually getting so far as to get involved with how the curriculum is formed, it means that the businesses can be confident, I should say, that there is the right talent and skills coming out of those educational establishments so that those businesses can utilise those skills and that talent in the future. The flip side of it as well is obviously it benefits all the young people as well, because they get an opportunity to really understand all the different opportunities there are out there for them and how to access them. So whether it be A-levels and degrees or apprenticeships or traineeships or all the different kind of routes you've got, they know everything that there is to know. And hopefully we get to a point where all the schools and colleges are producing the talent that the businesses in the county need.
And that's great, Ben, in terms of seeing how employers can be engaged. And earlier today I was talking to Louise about our Employments and Excellence Charter, and here's the clip. So Louise, why did we bring this charter together to support employers?
Well, we started creating it last year, didn't we? When we had the consultations with local employers across Worcestershire, the LEP initiated, and then Hewitt's, we worked with you sort of with some seminars, etc. And the main findings we had from those was to do with around skill shortages, in people development. And those are still very important, but we were really then looking to extend that to something to support business in a wider sense, to bring in important issues like inclusion and diversity, flexible working, creating the workforce of tomorrow, etc. And really, I think the LEP's main aim through this process is to encourage best practice and, put something together that's meaningful, that sort of incorporates all the other great schemes that are already working in the county, and bring and also look at some of the national schemes and learn from those as well. Yeah,
and definitely bringing in your expertise from the University of Worcester as a fellow, as part of the Recruitment and Employment Confederation, bringing in that expertise really means that from an employer's perspective, why is this charter important?
Well, I think it's never been so important, actually. That's what we realised when we looked at these priorities. They might have changed slightly, but they've never been more important for employers to have this support at this time. And we really want to, improve. We've got great businesses in Worcestershire, but we're looking to improve employment standards across the board for businesses of all sizes. And really, the Excellence in Employment Charter offers a standard, to those who sign up and says, our Worcestershire businesses are serious about being the best they can be. And that's just the starting point. Obviously, we'll be developing that with input from local employers and experts in their field and specialists. And we're also backed, of course, by the CIPD and the Recruitment and Employment Confederation, and we'll be bringing in other groups as and when.
So this is a real opportunity for employers in Worcestershire, for those to show why they're such a good employer, but also that they're dealing with the issues that really matter and drive productivity and growth. So what does the Charter cover in terms of its topics?
Well, we've got several key principles that, and the first one I'd like to talk about really is, that goes right to the top of the list, is working with education, to develop the future workforce of tomorrow, because the plight of our young people in the county, is an absolute priority. And we've already got some really good themes going on, connecting schools and business for one, inspiring Worcestershire. So it's building on that, but there is some urgency, around right now around encouraging employers to find ways of offering work experience and apprenticeships and all those things. So we'll be looking to encourage employers in that way. Workplace training is another one. That's another key principle. Looking at training and development, not just at the start of our employees' time with us, but actually right the way through all stages of employment, which in this sort of tech revolution that we're finding ourselves in, is really important to make sure that our existing people, are equipped and have everything they need and all the resources and the knowledge and know-how that they need.
So we're going to work together to bring about those key principles, to give employers best practice, workshops and other information to really bring about a good employment in Worcestershire.
Yeah, that's right. And the one thing that I think, the really important thing that we wanted to cover as well is leadership, because boy, that's a big one. Our business leaders have been hugely challenged through this pandemic, and so we want to, and it can be quite a lonely place, at the top. So it's kind of sharing through those roundtables all of the experience that's been gained, and making sure that we develop best practice for the county.
Okay, I mean, it's great for us in terms of launching the Employment into Excellence Charter today, and for employers who are interested in finding out more, please go to the Worcestershire LEP website to register your interest, and from there we can come out and explain far more to you as an employer of how you can get engaged and recognised by the Charter. Thank you, Louise. It's been great talking to you, and I look forward to working you on the Charter in the future. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks, Gary.
So Ben, we were looking at also the trends related to kind of COVID, the impact that's had on our Making Connections podcasts. Mm-hmm. And on that, you were talking very much about how employers have adapted and really changed the way that they lead and work with their workforce. Mm-hmm. How has recruitment changed during this period?
A lot. That's an interesting question. I think like any industry, it's had to adapt to the changes that we've faced. I think very early on, it was very quiet. I think a lot of businesses were just basically getting their house in order and dealing with remote working. I mean, some of the employers that we deal with were suddenly upping sticks and putting 400 people into a remote working environment. So it doesn't matter how agile you are as a business, it takes a bit of getting used to. But actually what we saw then was quite quickly, once things had settled down, they started to use all the tools and technologies out there to pick up their recruitment processes. So I've used pretty much every video platform you've heard of, and probably a few you haven't heard of, to help manage those processes. And I think like any industry, as I say, everyone's just had to adapt and find a way to make things work. What we're seeing now, which is great, is really kind of, as we come out the other side, a real pickup in demand in certain key areas. So IT and engineering, where there has always been a skill shortage both nationally and locally, but also a real surge in demand for kind of blue collar temporary workers as manufacturing businesses get the wheels turning again and start to get product out of the door. And I think we see that as something that's probably going to continue moving forwards, certainly in the short to medium term, as businesses use that temporary labour to help, as I say, get their product out the door and get their services delivered.
Yeah, and we're seeing, so that would indicate we're not just seeing kind of companies in distress, but actually some companies have got a really positive outlook.
Absolutely, absolutely.
In your role as kind of president of the Chamber of Commerce, those employers across that wider base, what do you see in terms of the next 6 to 12 months? What are their real pinch points for employers, but also what are the kind of positive outlooks?
Yeah, the crystal ball bit, this, isn't it? So I think that we can't hide away from the fact that the next 6 months is probably going to be a tough time for many businesses, as some of the government support that's out there does unwind, things like the furlough scheme coming to an end, things like the job support scheme, which is due to run through into the early part of next year. That has helped businesses, save jobs. And I hope that actually, by and large, it's helped them secure them for the longer term. And certainly what we are seeing is in, again, these key sectors around IT and engineering, businesses are doing everything they can to hold on to that talent because they know how difficult it is to find and they don't want to have to go and find it again in the future. But realistically, I think, we're going to see this period of time where there are some more redundancies. But further past that, overall, a lot of the chatter I'm hearing is really positive, actually. Businesses have managed to ride out this storm by and large and are really just now happy that they're back at work and delivering. Yeah,
and I don't think we can hide the fact that redundancy is probably going to be, for the next kind of 6 to 12 months, a really tough time for some people and residents of Worcestershire. What support's out there for those people who have been made redundant, both the employers at that time, but also the individuals?
Yeah, so as with a lot of things that have come about in the last 6 months, there's lots of different schemes that have come up. There's also lots of different ways that businesses are reacting as well. So some of the businesses that we work with, particularly in the kind of advanced manufacturing sector, they've looked at how they can redeploy employees, second them almost to different parts of the business to make sure that they keep that talent in-house and they don't lose it completely. So there's lots of clever ways that businesses are reacting in that sense. Obviously that doesn't work for every employee, it doesn't work for every type of role. And so a lot of the work that's being done at the moment, and it ties in actually to a certain extent with what the Future Skills piece is all about, is about upskilling and retraining. So I'd urge anybody that is impacted by this to reach out to people, like the Chamber, like the LEP, and understand what the different options are that are out there, because really that's the thrust now. It's about making sure that people have got the skills necessary to get back into work. Quite often it's digital skills, but there's lots of other opportunities out there for them as well.
Yeah, great. And certainly the business support that's available out there is available through Worcestershire Business Central as well, something for employers to look at, but also employees, because there are a number of schemes that are about retraining. Thank you, Ben.
No problem.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Gary.
We've discussed a number of topics, but really where do businesses go to get their business support is really what we want to focus. And helpfully, I'm joined by Cole from Business Central, and welcome Judy back on the sofa again. So first question is really to you, Cole, in terms of where do businesses go to kind of find their business support in Worcestershire?
Well, the first port of call, Gary, would be Worcestershire Business Central, which is a growth hub for the county. And essentially, we've got all of the information, whether it's on our website, whether it's with our advisors, as to what all the partner offers are in the region. So holistically looking at business support, everything that a business would need, whether it's skills related, whether it's to do with business growth, business startup, a whole gamut of information and advice. So we're the first port of call, but then we work very closely with our partners to make sure people get the right solutions as they go through that journey.
Okay, and Judy, obviously the central government continues to make announcements about the summer statement, the winter jobs plan. How do we track those?
So we work with the Cull and the team at Business Central. So if you're looking for advice around apprenticeships, Cull and the team will obviously support, but also you can access Worcestershire Apprenticeships for more information, advice and support. But if you're looking for summer statement scheme information, so whether it's Kickstart or the incentives around apprenticeships or traineeships, then again initially go to Business Central and they'll pass you on for the advice.
And Carl, what's the team sort of there for in terms of Business Central? What do they actually do?
Well, it really is about making sense of all the support packages. Businesses are really busy, obviously, doing their day jobs. Therefore, our role is to make it easy for them to understand what's available, what they're eligible for, the different stages of business in terms of what they can access. So our role is very much about providing information, and the website's excellent, always up to date, lots of information and webinars, etc. people can attend. But more than that, we've got a team of people on the phones, either taking calls inbound or making calls outbound to make sure businesses can access as much of that information as possible. And then the second part of that is actually having advisors who can speak one-to-one with the business, actually understand where the business is at, where they want to get to, and look at a whole range of solutions that we can introduce to help them to grow and to employ more people and basically support our local economy.
Judy, we have some European programmes around sort of supporting either young people who are not in training or people to retrain. How do those fit into the picture as well?
So we have 3 European programmes in the county at the moment. So we have our support programmes for young people aged 18 to 24 who are out of work. We have a support programme for people who are looking for work, who are unemployed, and we have a support programme for workforces that want to upskill. But also, if you've got employees who you're looking to make redundant, it's a way of supporting them throughout that process. If you want more information on that, then you can come through to the team at Business Central and they'll redirect you to the right organisations, or you can have a look on the Skills for Worcestershire website, which will give you more details on all of the schemes.
Great. So your real first point of call is Business Central and they'll direct you through.
Yeah.
In terms of then that kind of COVID impact, have you been busier?
A lot busier, Gary. Obviously, things were changing very quickly in the early part of the COVID crisis with the government announcements around different job retention scheme to do with the CBILS and the bounce back loans. And we had to keep everything up to date to make sure we were on top of that and understood what the businesses could access. So the website was obviously critical in terms of being a source of information, which was continually updated. And as a team ourselves, not only taking inbound calls, but actually calling businesses proactively to make sure they understood the situation. Obviously, as the crisis kind of continued, we spoke to a lot of businesses, a lot more than we would ordinarily, but that was really, really useful to actually gauge the intelligence side of it as well, not just the helping the businesses, but understanding where their needs were, and we acted as a conduit to kind of feed that back up the chain to government, and we feel that intelligence was vital in some of the changes that the government then made to make some of these, for instance, a bounce back loan much more accessible, and the ability for that then to help businesses who weren't able to access the CBILS loans, for instance. So that kind of intelligence gathering was just as critical for us to understand where businesses were at as the support measures that we implemented.
And thank you. That's been great contribution from all our contributors to end the skills and training and employment session. It's been really, we've covered a lot of ground there in terms of our relationship between schools and education, our relationship in terms of employers and the work that they do. Definitely get engaged with the charter that you can find at the LEP website. And then for all your business advice, please go to Worcestershire Business Central where you can get all that advice information. Thank you.